Welcome, my dear students. Welcome, everybody. This is a lecture in sampling, and this is lecture in business research, and we will talk today about the sampling and the process of sampling. The sampling and the process of sampling. Sampling design or sampling. Sampling is concerned with the selection of a subset of individuals from within a statistical population. So usually we use the sampling to choose a sample from the overall population. The population is what you represent. As example, if you are studying nails, the nails sample, you will take some of these nails from the population in the whole nails of the factory. If you are studying the samples of the, as example, let's say prescriptions, kind of pills or tablets, then these tablets, which you will select, you will take sample from it. As example, 100 units, 200 tablets, 300 tablets. That's we call it sample from the overall population of the whole or the universe. They call it population, or some textbooks they call it the universe. Estimate characteristics of the whole population. Two advantages. What are the advantages of using the sampling here? Because its cost is lower and the data collection is faster. That's true. Yeah, because in that case, the sampling will help me to reduce the cost, and I cannot exactly because I cannot test or examine all the population which I'm studying. So here I'm just studying like a kind of sampling units or just a part of this society or this population. And at the same time, it's faster to get the because if we, as example, if you are studying now any phenomena in a village, let's say let's say we are studying the people who are afternoon active in a village, then are you going to select all the people or take all the people, not select, take all the people who are working in this village and put them as a sample? That will be too much money, and at the same time it will take too long, it will last too long. But you take a sample, but the most important thing in the sample, like what we will say next on, is that this sample, the greater the sample, the better to represent the population. So don't take as example 2 or 3 persons from the village and say those represent the whole village. No, no. If we find a thief in a village, that doesn't mean that the whole village are thieves. Particularly if you want to study any characteristic in the population, make the sample larger as much as you can. And also one thing, there are mathematical approaches to calculate the sample. So it's not left loose, but there are many ways to calculate the sample and the sample number. A sample design, a definite plan for obtaining a sample from. Okay, let's go now for the definition. Sample design is the theoretical basics and practical means by which we infer the characteristics of some population by generalizing from characteristics of units comprising the population, which is the sample. So you take from the sample the characteristics, and you can apply it with a confidence into the whole population. This is the meaning of the sample. Steps in designing sample. This is very important. First, define the population or universe. Second, state the sampling frame. Sampling frame. 3, identify the sampling unit. 4, state the sampling method. 5, determining the sample size. 6, spell out the sampling plan. 7, select the sample. Those are the steps I will say again. First of all, define the population. We will go to define the population. Okay, define the population. Second, state the sampling frame. Third, identify the sampling unit. Fourth, state sampling method. 5, determining the sample size. 6, spell out the sampling plan, what you will do in the sample. 7, select the sample. It will be shown up to us now one step by one step. In the population definition, we have to know the problem very well. The problem which we are working on, we have to know it very well. And something this includes defining the population from which our sample is drawn. That's true. So I have to know how many units in the population, what are the characteristics of the population, and what are the things are common in this population, what I'm studying in this population. A population can be defined as including all people or items with the characteristics one wish to understand. So this is the population, the overall, everything. Like I told you, if you are studying testing a prescription or pills, then the population is the whole pills of the factory in the pharmaceutical factory. The population is all the units which you study. If you are studying the phenomena like people are afternoon active in a village, then the population is the whole people living in this village. The population is the whole, but the sample is a part of the population. A sample is a part of the population. Again, I'm saying the sample is a part of the population because there is very rarely enough time. Because of what? We do this because to reduce the time and the cost. Of course, I cannot study every single unit in the population. Sometimes that which defines a population is obvious. For example, a manufacturer needs to decide whether a batch of materials from the production of high enough quality to be released for the customer. Sometimes we have to study all the population. That's truth. In some cases, as example, if you are checking units production, which is very precious, you cannot take a sample. As example, something is very antiques or whatever, and this is very, very expensive. And you have to check it one by one. So in that case, sample never been existing and is not a good experience to do such. Okay. In other cases, our population may be even less tangible. For example, one of the Joseph studied the behavior of roulette wheels at a casino in Monte Carlo and used this to identify a basic wheel. So here, sometimes the population is intangible. You cannot see it. Or less tangible. You cannot see it. However, the things which we want to say, the situation often arises when we seek knowledge about the cause system of which the observed population is an outcome. Okay, it's very nice. Okay, the sample, look at this, as a sample from a larger superpopulation. For example, a researcher might study the success rate of a new quit smoking program on a test group of 100 patients in order to predict the effect of the program if it were made available nationwide. Here, the superpopulation is everybody in the country. And this is actually will be very hard to study everyone in the country. Note also that the population from which the sample is drawn may not be the same as the population about which we actually want the information. Sometimes this happens. Often there is a large but not complete overlap between these two groups. The two groups here is meant the population and the sample due to frame issues. Sometimes they may be entirely separate. For instance, we might study rates in order to get a better understanding of human health. Look at this. So you made a sample on the rats, but the rats, there are some characteristics which is common between the rats and the human also. So what will apply on the rats can apply. So you make the tests here on the rats. So sometimes the population and the sample are different. This is the meaning of it. Time spent in making the sampled population and population of concern precise is often well spent because it raises many issues, ambiguities, and questions, and so on. So now we know from this paragraph, the first thing is to define your population. Defining the population. Population is all the units, like I wrote some up back, all the units from where you will make your own, you are studying the characteristic which you are studying. So it's all, like I said again, if you are studying a phenomena in a village, then the population are all the people who are living in this village. This is the population. Of course, it's very difficult to make the study on all the units of this village, or all the villagers. For that reason, if there are 10,000, then this will cost too much time and will cost too much effort. For that reason, we make the experiment. We first apply it on the sample. What is the sample? Like I said before, it is drawn out of the population. It's drawn out of the population. It's units that represent the whole or the total population. Okay. Sampling frame. What is the sampling frame? In the most straightforward cases, such as the sentencing of a batch of materials from production, acceptance sampling by lots, it is possible to identify and measure every single item in the population and to include any of these samples. However, look at this. In the more general case, this is not possible. Yes, it's very difficult because we said it's time lasting and costs is very high if you will study every single unit in the population. Where voting is not compulsory, there is no way to identify which people will you actually vote. So you can do this in the elections. You cannot take sample in the elections. As example, I will take 100 person, and if the 80% of them said, I will take sample of 100 individual, and if 80% of them, like 80% said yes to X, we elect X. That means that the whole country will elect X. This is wrong. So we cannot use the sampling in the elections as example. Okay. We seek usually sampling frame which had the property that we can identify every single element and include any in our own sample. The most straightforward type frame is a list. Yes, like I told you in the start itself, if we want to get a list or frame, population frame, or we have to take a list of elements of the population. Please notice this sentence. I will make it in different color so that it will be clear. A list of elements of all the population. A list of elements of all the population. So this we have, that we call it, this word we call it frame. We call it frame. This word we call it frame. Here. So the frame is a list of elements of the population, preferably the entire population. Of course, it's for the entire population as well. Which appropriate contact information? For example, in an opinion poll, possible sampling frames includes an electoral register and telephone directory. So all the units. So the sample frame or the frame which we'll take, it's including a list of elements of all the population. Please don't forget this. Problem related with sampling frame. Sometimes some problems happen with the sampling frame, like non-coverage and incompleteness. Sometimes it's not completed. Sometimes appearance of the cluster of the elements. Sometimes inclusion of foreign elements in the list. Sometimes you find things that you are not expected in the list of the elements or the frame. Actually, before I go to this part, I have questions. I will put one question here for you guys to answer, and we'll go through it and see how the students doing well. This is for the sampling questions. This is the part of the sampling questions. And we will go right now to say, define the sample. Define the frame or the sampling frame. We said it's all the units of the society which we are studying. Second thing, also define the population, and I said before that this population means the universe. Second question, why we use sampling? These are the things which we covered just now. So these are the points which we cover, and these are the points which why we use the sampling. Why do we use the sampling stages? Why we use the sampling? This is the second question. So here we go. Okay. We use the sampling so that it will save time and effort. The time and the cost. We use the sampling because it will save the time and the cost. I will stay here like around 5 minutes because to get your answers before I move back into the next one. I will stay here like around 5 minutes to, to move forward after you finish answering this part. Thank you. Our questions here, define the sample, define the population, why we use the sampling. Please answer it inside your notebook. Okay, my dears, we came to the define the sample, define the frame, and the population, and why we use the sampling. Those are the two questions which we had to answer them. Particularly, we go now to the probability and non-probability sampling. What do we mean by probability sampling? Probability sampling will give a chance for all the units to be elected or to be chosen. To choose any sample unit of them, it is having the same chance. But non-probability, here the researcher put his own willing and desires in choosing the sample. A probability sampling is one which is look at this, which every unit in the population has a chance greater than 0 of being selected in the sample. This is what I want. This is what I want. So a probability distribution, here it is. Sampling is the one in which every unit in the population has a chance greater than 0 of being selected in the sample. And this probability can be accurately determined, the combination. Example, we want to estimate the total income of adults living in a given street. We visit each household in the street, identify all the adults living there, and randomly, look at this, randomly select adults from each household. This is an example of the probability. Of course, this probability sampling give a chance for all the units to be represented in the sample and be selected in the sample. And that's accuracy is very high in the results of the research. Okay. This is an example of the probability sampling. Probability sampling includes sample, random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, probability proportional, two-size sampling, and cluster or multi-stage sampling. These various ways of probability sampling have two things in common. So the probability sampling have two characters. Every element has non-zero probability of being sampled and involves random selection at the same point. So random selection, and everyone is having the same chance to appear in the results. So we have sampling. The probability sampling is random and a chance, equal chance for any sampling unit to be selected. The non-probability sampling. What about the non-probability sampling? No, here the situation is different. Non-probability sampling is any sampling method where some elements of the population have no chance of selection. They are sometimes referred to as out of coverage. Sometimes they call it out of coverage or undercovered, or where the probability of selections can be accurately determined. So there is no probability. There is no using for probabilities. It involves the selection of elements based on assumptions. Look at this. So here I select the sampling based on the assumption regarding the population of the interest, because the interest of the researcher, which make it easier for him. What is easier for him to collect the data back? Hence, because selection elements is non-random, it is non-random. Non-probability sampling does not allow the estimation of sampling errors. For that reason, these conditions gives Pareto exclusion bias. So this also will give a bias. Bias means that you tend your results for a specific thing. You are by your hand, you are willing to do something and thinking about this is the reason. So you are favoring, encouraging, you as a researcher, encouraging that this will happen. So you give bias to this point. Bias means when I tend to favor something. And there are errors here, of course, because we said non-probability is including errors because it doesn't give the same chance for all the sample units to be selected. These, okay, about the population information about all this. Example, look at this. This example also will show to you. We visit every household in a given street and interview the first person to answer the door. In every household with more than one occupant, this is a non-probability sample. Why? Because some people are more likely to answer the door, e.g., an unemployed person who spends most of their time at home is the one who will answer the door, is more likely to answer the door. And it is not practical to calculate this probability. Okay, what are the non-probability sampling methods? What are they? I can study it. Include accidental sampling. Notice that we said it's including bias and it's including sampling error. It's including bias, B-I-A-S, and it's including also sampling error. Quota sampling and purposive sampling. These are the three types of non-probability sampling methods. In addition, the response effects may turn any probability designation into a non-probability design and the characteristics of it. So here are the three types of the non-probability sampling. We said again, accidental sampling, quota sampling, and purposive sampling. I will stop here now before we go to the sampling methods part. Before we go to the sampling method parts, I will stop here right away and say, what are the two methods of sampling? This question will be a question here. State the two methods of sampling. Just stay here a few minutes to get your answer, guys. State the two methods of sampling before we leave into the next step. I shall stay here a few minutes. State the two methods of sampling. Here we are. This is the question. So today we have three questions. Sampling, what the meaning of sampling, define the sample, define the frame population, why we use sampling, state the two methods of sampling, and this is the last question. Shall stay here a few minutes before we move into the next part. Please answer inside your notebook. Please, you can Google search or you can go to the textbooks and read it and write it down from there. What are the two methods of sampling?